All right, guys, so here is our warm-up. We've already said that a right triangle is 90 degrees, has a 90-degree angle. The Pythagorean theorem was a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we just used the Pythagorean theorem and solved for x. Okay? Now we have one more question left that we haven't answered, which was, how do we find, or what does it mean if a triangle is an isosceles triangle? Can someone unmute and tell me what isosceles triangle means?
When at least two sides are the same.
Yeah, good job. So isosceles means two legs or two sides are the same, are the same length. Do you know, when my wife and I were having our first baby, we have 3 kids, but when we were having our first kid, we were trying to think of names. We knew it was going to be a girl. So we're thinking of girl names. And I said, we should name our daughter Celise. And my wife was like, why would you want to name her Celise? That's not like a family name. It's not a common name. And I was like, well, then people, if they were like talking about her, they could be like, hey, I saw Celise today. And I was like, I saw Celise? Huh? Huh? Yeah, we didn't name her that. So I thought it was funny. My wife didn't. Okay, here we go. Let's go to what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about special right triangles. There are 2 types of special right triangles. One of them is called a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And does anyone remember what the other one is? Can you unmute and just shout it out?
Is it 60?
There is a 60 in it. It's going to be a 30, 60, 90. So good job. So we have 2 types of special right triangles, and we're going to go over how to use those today. It should be review. It's something you've learned before, but it's going to be something that comes up in this next unit we're doing. Let's start with the some basics with right triangle review. So remember, we said a right triangle is a 90-degree angle. This side, the side across from the right angle is called the hypotenuse. And that is a weird word, hypotenuse. But what that just tells us is which side is the longest. The other sides we just called legs. They're the legs of a triangle. The legs don't have to be the same length. Like in this picture, the legs were different. Now, what we're going to do is find missing sides in right triangles using 2 types of special right triangles, 45, 45, 90, and 30, 60, 90. Now, if you have printed off the notes, great. If you have not, I need you to take notes, especially on this next part here, okay? I'm going to show you how easy it is to find missing sides in a right triangle if you know the trick. So let me show you this, okay? So if I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, so I'm actually going to highlight here and say, look, here's my 45, 45, 90 triangle. The relationship between the sides is that if you are given a leg, the other leg is going to be the same distance. So if this side is x, that side is x. Since these base angles are congruent, then these 2 legs are the same length. So what that tells us is, let's come over here to the right. Here I've got a 45, 90, and I actually know that this angle here is also going to be 45. The reason I know that is because all the angles in a triangle, they add up to a magic number. Does anyone know what that magic number is that all the angle, like the degree of the angles all add up to? Will someone unmute and tell me what is the sum of all the angle measures going to be?
180.
Yes, that is correct. So all triangles add up, the measures of their angles add up to 180 degrees. So if I subtract off this guy right here, that's 90 degrees, then I'm left with 90 degrees, okay? And then if I subtract off the 45 that was given, what's left over is 45. So I know that this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle, okay? Now, I am told that one of the legs is 6. What does that mean this other leg has to be? Well, it's going to be 6 as well, because the legs are congruent, okay? Now, from here, we could do the Pythagorean theorem, but there's actually a trick. In order to get the hypotenuse, you just times x by the square root of 2. That's it. Now, what does that mean here? I'm going to take the leg, which is 6, and times it by the square root of 2. And you have just found 2 missing sides in a triangle. Pretty easy. That's why we like special right triangles, because we can find the missing sides without having to do things like the Pythagorean theorem or other formulas. Now, this was when we were given a leg. What if we are given the hypotenuse? Okay, that one's a little bit trickier. We're actually going to do just the opposite. So for me to go from the leg to the hypotenuse, what I did was I multiplied by the square root of 2. So I'm going to put that in here. Multiply by the square root of 2. So now if we're going backwards, if we're going from the hypotenuse to the leg, we would do the opposite. Someone, I need you to unmute and tell me what the opposite of multiplying by the square root of 2 would be.
Dividing by the square root of 2.
There you go. So thanks, Courtney. I'm going to divide by the square root of 2. So what that means here is that if I had x as a hypotenuse, what I would do is now I would do x and I would divide it by the square root of 2. Now over on this side, since these guys are the legs, they're both going to be the same. So this leg is also going to be whatever the hypotenuse is divided by the square root of 2. Okay, so an easy example here. Come over to the bottom right. I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, so 45, 45, 90, and the hypotenuse is 15 square roots of 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by the square root of 2 in order to get whatever the side length is here, the leg. Now what happens if I do 15 square roots of 2 and I divide it by the square root of 2? What can I do to simplify that?
Do you cross out the 2's?
Yeah. Square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2 is just 1. So then this just becomes 15. Which if one leg is 15, then the other leg is going to be 15. And there you go. Didn't that work out nice? Okay, now we're going to do 8 examples of this, and then we'll go to the 30, 60, 90. But what you need to remember is that for a 45, 45, 90, if you're given a leg, you just, first off, the other leg is going to be the same, okay? But then you times by the square root of 2 to get the hypotenuse. If you're given the hypotenuse, well, then you have to do the opposite, which was divide by the square root of 2. And that will give you your leg, and the other leg will be the same. So for this, what I'm going to do for these 4 is I am going to show you how to do this. I'm going to do these by myself, and you guys are going to watch. And then for the next 4, you're going to try them on your own. Okay. Now I'm actually going to start with number 2 because I like that. Actually, let me take a step back. What I want to point out first is that these are all 45, 45, 90 triangles. So what I'm going to do is get out my highlighter and just show that, okay, I see a 45 here. That means that's 45, 45, 90. Okay, so we can use the properties of special right triangles here. But let's start with number 2. If I have one of my side lengths is 3, well, then I know that my other side length is going to be 3. And to get from the leg to the hypotenuse, I'm just going to times that by the square root of 2, so that the hypotenuse is 3 square roots of 2. And that's it. I'm done. I just did that. I found 2 missing sides in about 10 seconds. Wasn't that great? Now, this is when people are like, yeah, but it's going to get harder. Well, maybe a little, but not too much, okay? For example, let's go to number 1 now. If one of the legs is 5 square roots of 2, well, then the other leg is 5 square roots of 2. What am I going to times 5 square roots of 2 by in order to get the hypotenuse? It's the same as before. I'm just going to times by the square root of 2. Now, since it already had a square root of 2, this is going to simplify. So let me just show you how to do this. We're going to take 5 square roots of 2 and times it by the square root of 2. When you multiply a square root by a square root, you can combine them to look like that, okay? So it's a square root of 2 times 2, which is the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2, and 5 times 2 is 10. So that means the hypotenuse here was 10. Now that took a little bit of like simplifying, but it followed the same rules where the legs are the same, and then we times it by the square root of 2. Okay? Let me jump to 4 next, and then we'll go to 3. So on number 4, it gives us the hypotenuse, and we're trying to work backwards to find the leg. In that case, we're going to do the opposite. Instead of timesing by square root of 2, we're going to divide by the square root of 2. Well, how does that work? Let's look. If I do 4 square roots of 10 and I divide it by the square root of 2, we're going to simplify in the same way we did on that last one, where if I notice here, when I had a square root timesing by a square root, we could combine it. Now I have a square root divided by a square root. Well, we can still combine it. That's going to be 4 times the square root of 10 divided by 2, which, what is 10 divided by 2? It's going to be square root of 5. So here, m is 4 square roots of 5. And if m is 4 square roots of 5, then n is also 4 square roots of 5, because it's the same distance there. It's an isosceles triangle, okay? All right, we're going to do the same thing on number 3. Once again, we have the hypotenuse, and we're going back to a leg, which means we want to divide by the square root of 2. Now, this is going to be a little interesting, because when I do that, I'm just going to get 10 divided by the square root of 2. Now, unfortunately, we can't leave it right there. If it was up to me, we'd leave it there. But there's some mathematicians who decide the rules that said, we don't like square roots on the bottom. We don't like that. We want the bottom to always be a rational number, not an irrational number, because a square root's irrational. So what they said is we have to rationalize this. The way we do that is just timesing the square root of 2 by itself. Okay, but if I times the bottom by the square root of 2, I also need to times the top by the square root of 2. Now, we saw from up here that if I take the square root of 2 and I times it by the square root of 2, that's going to turn into the square root of 4, which is going to turn into 2. Okay, So long story short here is when I do 10 over the square root of 2 and I times it by the square root of 2 over 2, in the bottom, this will turn into the square root of 4, which is 2. In the top, it's going to just stay as 10 square roots of 2. However, we can simplify 10 divided by 2 to just become 5 square roots of 2. So when I take 10 and I divide it by the square root of 2, it'll turn into 5 square roots of 2. And if x is 5 square roots of 2, then y is also 5 square roots of 2. All right, so now the simplifying is a little bit tricky, but the more you do this, the easier it's going to get. I'm going to pause and ask you guys, do you have any questions on these 4 problems? This is a time that you could unmute and just, if you're confused, odds are someone else is, and so they'd appreciate if you ask for help. So what questions do you have, guys? Preguntas? No? All right, well, here's what we're going to do. Here are 4 more problems. They are all 45, 45, 90 triangles. Okay, I'm trying to get it so you can see it. I am going to give you 2 minutes, and I want you to try to find some of those. And when I come back, I want 4 of you to volunteer to tell me how to do it. And if you don't know, that's okay, but I at least want you to try. So I'm getting out my timer, and I'm going to set it for 2 minutes. And your job is in the next 2 minutes to try to do at least one of these, okay? All right, 2 minutes starts now. Good luck. 2 minutes. Okay, we've got 30 seconds. Remember, if you get stuck, try a new one. Come on, timer. All right. All right, so what I need from you now is I need volunteers. I need someone to unmute and tell me 5, 6, 7, 8, which one they did and explain to how to do it. And if you don't volunteer, I'll just kind of call on people. All right, so go ahead, unmute, tell me. All right. You forced my hand. Rayleigh, are you there? I'm going to have you help me on this one. Just say hi so I know you're there.
Hi.
Hi. She's like, oh, brother. Hey, we're going to do an easy one. You get to start out easy, okay?
Okay.
Let's just start with 5. Okay. Now, you might think it looks scary because it's a fraction, but I need you to just tell me, first off, what are we given on number 5? Are you given the leg or the hypotenuse?
The leg.
Okay. Now, if one of the legs is 5 square roots of 2 over 2, what does that mean the other leg is?
The same thing.
The same, right? Because it's isosceles. Good job. So that's 5 square roots of 2 over 2. How do we get from the leg to the hypotenuse? What do we have to do, Rayleigh?
You would multiply it
By what?
by square root of 2.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So now that takes some work. So let's actually just do that over here. So I'm going to do 5 square roots of 2 over 2, but we're going to multiply the numerator by the square root of 2. So Rayleigh, what is a square root of 2 times the square root of 2? What will that turn into?
Would it just be 2?
Yeah, it turns into the square root of 4, which is just 2. Now, guys, what is 2 divided by 2? Just 1. So Rayleigh, what does that mean our hypotenuse is?
5.
And you got it. Nice job. That was it. So whatever the leg is, the other leg is the same. And you times the leg by the square root of 2 in order to get the hypotenuse. Well done, Rayleigh. Thank you for helping. I'm going to open up. I'm going to give 10 seconds. Does anyone want to take 6, 7, or 8? Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Don't do that. All right. Well, then we're just going to go with Jaden. Jaden, you help me out on 7. Say hi so I know you're there.
Let's get sober.
All right. So 7, Jaden, are you given the leg or the hypotenuse?
The hypotenuse.
There you go. So how do we work backwards? If I'm trying to get from the hypotenuse to the leg, what do we do?
You divide it. I'm kind of confused, but I think you divide it.
There you go. Divide it by what?
Is it the x square root of 2, right? Or
Yeah.
no?
So let's take 9 square roots of 2 and divide it by the square root of 2. How does that simplify?
Would you cross out the square root of 2? Or-
Yeah. So that just leaves me with 9. And if one of the legs is 9, what does that mean the other leg is?
9.
All right. Good job, Jaden. Okay. Awesome. Let's go to this next one. I'm going to have Alexa help me out with this. Alexa, will you just say hi so I know you're there?
Here.
She's here. All right. Again, Alexa, on number 6, do I have the hypotenuse or the leg?
The hypotenuse.
How do I get from the hypotenuse to the leg? What do we do?
You divide square root 2.
Now, unlike Jaden's, when we divided by the square root of 2, it just kind of simplified. We're going to have to actually do what we did on the last page. So let me just show you again. If you ever have a square root in the bottom, then we have to times it by itself, which in this case, the square root of 2, we're going to times it by the square root of 2 top and bottom. So let's do that. Now, Alexa, when I times the square root of 2 by the square root of 2, what is that going to turn into?
Wouldn't that be a 2?
Yeah. So this becomes 6 square roots of 2 over 2.
And then
And let's simplify that. Keep going, Alexa.
you would, oh, wait. Would you cross them out?
They wouldn't completely cross out, but they do simplify. What's 6 divided by 2?
4.
That'd be 6 minus we're dividing.
Oh,
So in other words, what's half of 6?
3.
There you go. So this is 3 square roots of 2. So this leg is 3 square roots of 2, which means what is the other leg?
Same thing.
Same thing. Awesome. Okay. We have one left. I'm just going to do that one real quick here. But it's going to be just like the last 2 that we did. We are given the hypotenuse, and we're trying to work backwards here. So in order to go back to the leg, we divide by the square root of 2. So I'm going to have 2 and then divide it by the square root of 2. Now we can't keep the square root in the bottom, so I'm going to times by the square root of 2 here and the square root of 2 here. Sorry, that's a little sloppy. That turns into 2 square roots of 2 over 2, which now I can cross out the 2's, so this is just the square root of 2. And if one leg is a square root of 2, then the other leg is a square root of 2. All right. Cool, cool, cool. Let me come back to where I can see everybody. Do you guys have any questions on these 4 that we just did? Or the last 4? This is all, we're going to be done with 30, 60, 90, or sorry, done with 45, 45, 90. And we're going to now move on to a 30, 60, 90. Trying to expand so I can see everyone. Does anyone have any questions on these? Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a 2-minute break. In this 2 minutes, you can stand and stretch, or you can run to the bathroom real quick, or you could get a drink. But I'm giving you 2 minutes, and then we're going to come back and do 30, 60, 90. I'm going to stay here. If anyone has a question in this next 2 minutes, you can ask me. Or if you just want to talk, we can talk. We could say, are there any 49er fans out there? Anyone going to gloat about winning? Chargers also had a good win. Or no, that was the Rams, right? I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of NFL. More college football guy. Jaden, who's your team for soccer? Who do you support?
Arsenal, but they're crap right now.
Did you say Barca or Arsenal?
Arsenal.
Arsenal, okay.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Any other football fans, like football fans out there? Real Salt Lake is my team, and they signed like a bunch of teenagers. Like they signed the youngest player that's ever been signed. He was 14, and he's
I
the
played him,
youngest.
Soberg.
What was that?
I played him like
Oh,
2
really?
years ago when I
Is he
played
good?
with my premier team. Yeah, he's fast. His strides are humongous.
Nice. Well, I'm like,
His
I
strides
saw
are
his
like 3 a
picture,
month.
and I'm like, this dude is like 12. I guess he's 14, but still, they
Yeah,
look pretty young.
he was at the RSL building like last weekend. Me and Alex and Miguel and all that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, nice. That is our 2 minutes. Our time is up, so we're going to come back now. I hope that 2 minutes was good break. We are going to learn about our next type of special right triangle, which is 30, 60, 90. Before we do, let's just re-emphasize what we learned here, okay? 30, 60, 90 is a little more complicated, but 45, 45, 90, what we learned is there's 2 scenarios. You're either going to be given a leg and you need to find the hypotenuse, and you find it by timesing by the square root of 2. Or you're given a hypotenuse and you need to find the leg, which you find by dividing by the square root of 2. Pretty easy. I hope the more you do it, the more it'll make sense. Now with a 30, 60, 90 triangle, there's actually 3 scenarios you could have. And so I've got 3 triangles, and I'm going to walk you through this, okay? Now, notice here that this is not an isosceles triangle. The legs are not the same. We have what's called a short leg, which is across from the 30-degree angle. And then we have a long leg, which is across from the 60-degree angle. So let's actually label those legs first, so we're on the same page. So the short leg is across from the 30-degree angle. So I'm going to call this short leg. Okay. Now, the long leg is going to be across from the 60-degree one. So that's the long leg. And of course, our hypotenuse is always the longest side. It's always across from the 90-degree angle. I'm just going to put HYP instead of longest leg. Okay, that's confusing. Come on now. All right. Okay. So the legs are not the same. Now, if you're given the short leg, it's actually going to be the easiest scenario here, okay? Let me show you how to do that. If you're given the short leg, you find the hypotenuse by just doubling it. So this will be 2 times whatever x is. And then you're going to find the short or the long leg by timesing that by the square root of 3. So we saw the square root of 2 with the 45, 45, 90. In the 30, 60, 90, we're going to have the square root of 3. Okay. Now let me give you an example of this because it's really not too bad. So come over and look at this triangle. Again, if this is 90 here and this is 60, well, then that defaults that this has to be 30 here. So it's 30, 60, 90. Okay. Now, notice this is the short leg. I'll just put SL for short leg. Now, for me to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, I just times it by 2. 7 times 2 is 14. For me to get from the short leg to the long leg, I just times by the square root of 3, which is going to give me 7 square roots of 3. And that's it. I'm done. Okay. Pretty easy. Now, let me actually just jump down to this last scenario here. Okay, I'm going to skip the middle one. Come down here to the last one. What if I'm given the hypotenuse? How do we find the other ones? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the opposite of what we did when we were given the short leg. If you look up here, to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, you times by 2, right? I'm going to put a little note here. Times by 2. And to get from the long leg to the hypotenuse, you times by the square root of 3. So now if I'm given the hypotenuse, what is the opposite of timesing by 2? You guessed it, it's going to be divided by 2. So that's going to make this become x divided by 2. Now you have the short leg. So getting to this guy is going to be easy. It's just what we did before. You just times the short leg by the square root of 3. So now the short leg is going to be x divided by 2, but then we times it by the square root of 3. I don't have an example on this page for that, but I will show you that. Oh, actually I do. It's right here. So let's just do this one. So if you look at this triangle right here, again, this is a 30, 60, 90. And it actually helps me if I label and say, okay, this is the short leg, this is the long leg, and this is the hypotenuse. That way I make sure I don't mix up what I'm doing here, okay? But what we just learned was that if I'm trying to go from the hypotenuse to the short leg, that's what I'm showing here, we're going to divide by 2. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now, if I'm going from the short leg to the long leg, I am going to times by the square root of 3. So this is going to turn into 3 square roots of 3. And that's how you find those missing sides. Again, this is a lot easier, a lot faster than using the Pythagorean theorem or some other way. Now, the one that's a little bit tricky is if you're given the long leg. So in this scenario, I'm given the long leg. What we're going to do is we're going to make a circle and we're going to go first to the short leg and then from the short leg to here. Now, on the other two, when I was given the short leg and I was going to the long leg, we just times it by the square root of 3. So now we're going to do the opposite here. And instead of timesing by the square root of 3, we're going to divide by the square root of 3. And if that leaves us with a square root in the denominator, we have to simplify. Once we know what this short leg is, well, we already know how to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse. We just times it by 2. So I'm going to times it by 2 again. So this turns into 2x over the square root of 3. That's a 3. All right, now this might seem like a lot, and it is, but as we do some examples, we're going to do 8 examples, and then we'll be done, okay? And it'll make more sense as we do this. So what I would encourage you to do, I'm going to post these notes on Canvas, okay? But I want you for now to have these written down, oops, sorry, so that you can use them when I let you have 2 minutes to try it on your own, okay? So again, if I'm given the short leg, you times it by 2 to get to the hypotenuse, you times it by the square root of 3 to get to the long leg. If you're given the hypotenuse, well, then you divide by 2 in order to get to the short leg. And then it's the same as before. To get to the short leg to the long leg, you times it by the square root of 3. If you are given the long leg, you divide by the square root of 3 to get the short leg, and then you times by 2 to get the hypotenuse. I'm going to show you how to do 4 examples here. Okay, I'm going to do these 4. Then you're going to have 2 minutes to try to do 4 on your own. Let's start with number 9. I'm going to label these. And again, if that's 60, then that's 30 degrees here. Across from 30 is the short leg. Across from 60 is the long leg. And across from the 90-degree angle, that is going to be our hypotenuse. Okay. Now, I'm told that the short leg is 10. In order to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, we just take that 10 and we times it by 2. So 10 times 2 is 20. In order to get from the short leg to the long leg, we times by the square root of 3. So 10 times the square root of 3 is just 10 square roots of 3. And that is it. We're done. What? That was easy. Yep, you're right. It was. Let's go to number 11. And if it's not, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make light of this, but I think as you do this, you're going to see it's not too bad. Okay, I'm going to start again by labeling. And I'm going to say, all right, so that was 60. That means this is 30. So this is going to be the longest. So this is the hypotenuse. This is the shortest. So that's the short leg. And then this is the long leg. So now this is going to be working a little bit backwards. How do I get from the hypotenuse to the short leg? Well, on the last example, we were doing the opposite and we times by 2. So the opposite of timesing by 2 is dividing by 2, and half of 10 is 5. Now we're going from the short leg to the long leg, which the way that we do that is timesing by the square root of 3. 5 times the square root of 3 is 5 square roots of 3. Okay, Cool, cool, cool. Let's go to number 10. Again, I'm going to start by labeling short leg, long leg, hypotenuse. Here is my hypotenuse. Here is my short leg. Here is the long leg. So this is going to be similar to number 9, where we were given the short leg. The only difference is now we have a square root of 3 with it. So to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, we times it by 2. When I do 2 times 2 square roots of 3, 2 times 2 is 4, so that just turns into 4 square roots of 3. Now, when I go to take the short leg to the long leg, we're going to times the 2 square roots of 3 by the square root of 3. Now, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is going to turn into the square root of 9, which is just 3. So that turns into 2 times 3, which is 6. All right, last one for this page. I'm going to again label short leg, long leg, hypotenuse. Here's my 30-degree angle. Across from it is a short leg. Here's 60. Across from that is a long leg. And across from the 90-degree angle is a hypotenuse. Now, I am given the long leg. And to get to the long leg to the short leg, we need to do the opposite of what we've been doing. Before we were timesing by the square root of 3. So now we're going to divide by the square root of 3. Sometimes that's ugly, but here if I do 6 square roots of 3 and I divide it by the square root of 3, those cancel out to just give me 6. So that's nice. Then we have our short leg, and we've learned to get from the short leg to the long leg, you just double it. So 6 times 2 is 12. And there you go. That is how we use the 30, 60, 90 triangle to find missing sides. Okay, what questions do you have on these 4 that I just demonstrated? Do you have any questions on how to do these? Anybody? Okay, then what you're going to do is just like what we did before. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do this. There's 4 problems here. I want you to pick one and try it. A good place to start is with the short leg, long leg, and the hypotenuse. So 2 minutes, try one, and I'd like to have some volunteers. Good luck. Okay, 30 seconds. All right, guys. I would love at this point for someone to unmute and tell me how they did one of them. If not, I'm going to call on people. And remember, once we get done with these 4, we'll be done. So the sooner we get done, the sooner you're done, right? So volunteer, don't make me just sit here and be bored. Let's call on someone, or let's volunteer, okay?
I could do 16.
Nice, do it. Who is this talking?
Penelope.
Nice, take it, Penelope. Tell me how you did 16.
Okay, so first it's given the long leg,
Mm-hmm.
and in order to find the short leg, you have to divide 9 square root through by square root of 3. Yeah. And then that cancels the square root of 3's.
It's just 9, right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
And then to find the hypotenuse, you just multiply it by 2, which is 18.
That is excellent. Nice job, Penelope. Gold star. I'd give you a pride coupon, but remind me when we get there. I'll give you one. All right. Great. Thanks, Penelope, for taking 16. Someone take one of the others.
I could do 15.
Awesome. Who is this talking?
Rayleigh.
Who?
Rayleigh?
Rayleigh. Thanks, Rayleigh. You got 15? Go ahead.
Yeah. So since it's the hypotenuse, I could divide 8 by 2 to get the short leg, which would be 4. And then multiply that by the square root of 3, which would be 4 and square root of 3. Yeah.
Excellent. You guys are on fire. Good job. Kate, we got 2 more. Who wants to take one of them? All right. Estefania, I'm going to have you help me on this, okay? Will you say
Okay.
hi so I know you're there?
Hi.
Hi. All right. So on number 13, what are we given?
The short leg.
Awesome. How do I get from the short leg to the hypotenuse?
Times it by 2.
So that'll just be 2, right? How do you
Mhm.
get from the short leg to the long leg?
By square root of 3.
And there we go. Nice job. All right. 14, I need a volunteer. If not, we're going to have Maya help us. Maya, are you there? Can you say hello? Maya. Oh, she's chatting. I don't have a voice. Oh no. Hopefully you get a voice back. All right, we'll give her a pass. We'll give her a pass. On this one, guys, we start with the long leg. 14 looks scary because it's a fraction. But if we just do the same steps on 16 that, forget who did 16. They did it right. I think it was Penelope. If we go backwards here, we're going to divide by the square root of 3. What's going to happen is we'll have 7 square roots of 3 over 2. But then when we divide it by the square root of 3, that crosses out. So it just becomes 7 over 2. Then to get to the hypotenuse, we just double it, which turns into 14 over 2, or in other words, 7. That's what Maya was going to tell us to do, right, Maya? If you had a voice, you would have told us. Yes, we're just going to go with that. All right, so guys, now you should be familiar with how to do special right triangles, okay? The hardest part about them is not necessarily the like remembering it, what goes where, but like the simplifying. So let me show you something here. I'm going to show you our Canvas page and what your homework is going to be. you guys are going to go on here, and you see right here where it says special right practice. You're going to click on that, and this is going to be your practice, okay? So I'm going to let you go after I show you how to do this, and class normally goes till 10:30, so you should spend that next 20 minutes or whatever working on this, because you could probably get it done, and then you're done for the next 2 days, right? That's cool. But here we go. Here's question 1. Here is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Now it says given BC is 11. So what that means is this side here, BC, is 11. That is my short leg. How do I know what AC is? AC is going to be the long leg. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to times 11 by the square root of 3. Now, don't put that in your calculator. Just put in literally 11 square, and then you've got to put in square roots of 3. Now to get AB, we're going to double the 11, so it should be 22. And there we go. We did it. Then you're just going to keep going. It's going to have more questions like that. Here's another 30, 60, 90. Okay. Now, here's the hypotenuse. So to get the y value, we divide it by 2 to make it 8. Then we're going to take that 8 and times it by the square root of 3 in order to get the x value. And if you don't get it, there's a video to watch, but we got it, so we're good. Okay. What you're going to do is do as many of those as you can. And if you get stuck, take a picture of it and email me and I can help you. So that is what you're going to do right now. Let me change this so I can see everyone's faces. Do you guys have any questions before I let you go? If not, then you are free to get off the Zoom call and do the practice. But please, please, please do the practice. If you don't do the practice, you're going to forget it all. And the reason why we're starting this unit with going over this is because we use it a lot in later subjects. So you need to know how to do this, okay? All right, so if you have questions, stick around. If not, thanks for being here. And I will see you on Friday. Same, it'll be when second period starts on Friday. So it's a normal Friday schedule. So I'll send you a reminder of when that is, but it's not going to be 9 o'clock. It's going to be later, but I'll send you a reminder on Thursday. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Soberg, I have a question.
Go ahead, Jaden.
So on my classes, I kind of don't know who I have lunch with,
Oh,
like first or second lunch, because I
that's
had a teacher change in both of them, so I have no idea.
okay. So who is your third period?
Hold on, I'm logging in right now.
While you're checking, Andrew, Shaila, Saeed, did you guys have questions? Preguntas?
Wait, Soberg, I have your class A or B day?
8A.
Okay. So I have Miss Brecky for A days in the English hall.